r/AskReddit. What was the creepiest thing that ever happened to you when you were at home? I was asleep on my side and I felt a hand move up my arm and my friend whisper in my ear. I immediately woke up because I was home alone. Checked the whole house and was in fact still alone. It felt so real, and I even called my friend to ask them if they had been at my house and they were in another state on vacation. This still actually happens to me fairly regularly, whether I'm with other people or not. It doesn't freak me out as much anymore, but it does always wake me up very quickly. I'm fairly confident it's related to hallucinations associated with high pain. I hallucinate when I'm normally awake with high pain as well. One night, while hanging out in our living room, my husband asked me if I heard that. "Heard what?" I asked. He just kind of shrugged, then shook his head and went on doing what he was doing. He has better hearing than me, so I shrugged as well. He often perceives things that I don't, or picks up on sounds that get under his skin when they don't even register for me. It wasn't unusual. But then he got up and peered outside. He was flustered. He asked me if I was playing something on my computer on low or something that had laughing in it, but I wasn't playing anything with audio. He then asked me if I heard laughing. Nope, I heard nothing like that at all. My answer bothered him. He said that he could hear laughing coming from outside, that it sounded demonic, but kind of like how Bowser laughs when you lose a level in Mario. I definitely didn't hear anything of the sort. That only seemed to agitate him more. He paced by the windows a bit, but eventually gave it up and went back to piddling on his tablet, only to suddenly get up and go outside to investigate. At first I thought he was being goofy and just messing with me, but that's not really how he jokes around with me, and he was noticeably frustrated. He is not the sort of person who gets worked up. Seeing him like that was odd. Eventually, though, he calmed down and we went to bed. The next night he heard the laugh again. This time it really bothered him. He kept walking the perimeter of the house and went outside every time he thought he heard the laughter, but as soon as he passed through the door the sound stopped. I still didn't hear it. This happened for several nights in a row. It started eating at him, enough so that he considered looking around for a therapist because he was afraid he might be suffering from a mental health crisis. His family has a history of schizophrenia. I was so worried about him. Nothing could be done to soothe him. He stayed up later and later, unable to sleep because of the laugh and not knowing its source. He became really withdrawn, stuck inside his head. It was so scary seeing him like that. Then, a couple nights later, when I went outside to bring the trash can to the road, I heard it. That creepy Bowser laugh. It echoed down the street, bouncing off the few houses on it. It felt like it filled the air with that deep, strange undulation. It scared the absolute stuff out of me. I ran inside to get my husband, but it had stopped by the time we scrambled out the door again. We listened for the longest time, standing out in the dark in absolute silence. I was so freaked out, but I wanted to know what the stuff was going on. I refused to go back inside until we heard it again, together, and could confirm that it was something we both perceived at the same time. It felt like an eternity of standing at the edge of the road when the laughter started again. It was louder and longer than before. We determined that it was coming from down the road. He grabbed a flashlight and a baseball bat, then we headed in that direction. It's worth noting now that we lived in the sticks at the time. The road was a short country road that ended in a cul-de-sac that was the turnabout for a farm. In fact, the whole street had once been part of that farm's property, but the owners had sold bits and pieces of land off over the years, so that there were about half a dozen houses situated on the access road, each of which sat on their own 3 to 20 acres. Most everyone had some sort of livestock, so we were used to the sounds of donkeys, goats, cows, and even peacocks. We knew what fox screams sounded like and were familiar with the cries of coyotes. Yet, we had never heard anything like this laugh before. So with that in mind, there we were, working down a dark road in the middle of nowhere, trying to figure what the stuff was going on and what was producing that laugh. We were halfway between our house and the end of the road when we again heard that awful, possessed, crazed laugh. That deep, guttural, scary, stuffing laugh. It came from our right, from the direction of a paddock. A paddock with a pond. A pond that was home to a bunch of ducks. One of which did a great Bowser impression. Edit. For the record, I know duck quacks don't actually echo like I described, but man, it certainly seemed like it did. End of the semester my junior year in college I lived in a 3-story townhome, where the first story was just a carport and you'd take stairs around the back to get to the front door. Anyway, by this time in the year most of the students had left the college town except for the ones that had finals on the last day of finals, e.g. me and my roommate. So we had been studying till about 3 in the morning, and we both ended up knocking out on these couches we had on the main floor by the front door. At around 4:30 a.m., I think, I heard my roommate get up and lock the door. That woke me up, and in a half-asleep state I asked him, "Why are you locking the door?" He responded that someone just opened the door and closed it. I was too tired to care and attributed it to him sleepwalking, and laid my head back down and closed my eyes. Not 30 seconds later, I hear the front door start to rattle and see the knob turning. I looked at my roommate and we both stayed silent and still. I grabbed a knife I had on the coffee table and just waited frozen still. Eventually it stopped, after what felt like 30 minutes, but was probably 30 seconds, and we heard a truck start and drive away. When we woke up the next day we saw cop cars outside, and apparently like 7 out of the 10 houses in my community had been broken into and robbed.